And to Whiskey with a Mate, my favourite segment of the week, and not just because it's the last one. And my whiskey today, well, I was going to give my guest a really nice whiskey from Oban, the west coast of Scotland. Beautiful little town, 14-year-old one. Very nice. I know we'd like it very smooth, but him being a politician, he wanted one as close as he could get to his electorate, and 100 around. It's one that I've had before. It's going to be Joadja, which is from a little sort of Central Highland, whatever it's called, town in New South Wales, and it used to be populated by Scots, became a ghost town. A Spanish family has taken over, restarted the distillery, and have given this whiskey a very Spanish flavour. So anyway, well, politicians are what politicians will have. This is what he gets, Joadja. Tony Abbott is my guest. How are you, Tony?
I'm good, Andrew, and it's lovely to be with you, and it's nice to be drinking this. One of the unsung stories of contemporary Australia has been the rise of distilling. And in Tasmania today, there are, I think, upwards of 100 distillers. Mm-hmm. Not all whiskey, but a lot of whiskey distillers. There's quite a few now in Western Australia, and it's good to see that there's one in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales.
Yeah, lime burners in Western Australia is very good, but Tasmania's taken off. I mean, I can't afford some of those whiskies now, but I'm hoping to go down to to a bottle shop and get a Lark whiskey. Jim Molan, your colleague, Senator Jim Molan, came in last week.
Right.
He said, I'm just into whiskey, I'm into 100 pipers. I had a look at it, it's about $30. Yeah. I thought, anyway, so he brought a bottle that he didn't know what it was, a Lark from Tasmania, and once he sipped it, he took it home again. He was going to give it to me as a gift.
But he liked it.
I got one sip and he took off again.
That's,
Jim,
well, you know what we pollies are like. We don't give too much away.
People are going to say, I'm going to address the monster in the room already, Tony. Here's a former Prime Minister. Here's a Liberal Party politician. Yep. And here I'm saying, hey, this is my mate. Now, people say you shouldn't, you know, they say, oh, you can't be mates with a politician. They say, oh, you're always so soft on Tony Abbott, which is not true. I mean, one is, a lot of journalists have politicians as mates. They just don't declare it. I say it. But also it's led to some awkward moments, like when I said it was catastrophically stupid to give the knighthood to Prince Philip, and the ABC loved that so much they ran with it all day.
Yep.
And of course when I said change or die some months before you lost. So I'm trying to say, is a mate, but I try to be honest. Mm-hmm. That's hard though, isn't it, for you, when you hear a mate
Look, Andrew,
trash you?
Yeah, it is, but I appreciate that as a professional journalist or a professional commentator, you've got to call it as you see it.
Do you think I should stop calling you mate?
Look, what you do is your business, but I, as you know, I like and admire you as a bloke, and I think that you're a fine contributor to our public life.
You're not helping me here.
Sorry about that. But look, there are lots of people who you can respect and admire and like without necessarily agreeing with all the time. And
yeah, but you don't have to say it. The mate doesn't have to say it.
Your job is to call it as you see it. That's what you do. 9 times out of 10, I agree with you. Mostly, I agree with you very strongly.
But how cross were you when I had a whack at you?
Well, you were 99% of Australians purported to support you on that occasion, and that's just the way it is.
And mate, I was going to bring some tucker here because I've never known a man to eat as much as you do. I guess it's all that cycling. And the family still talks about when you cleaned up our dining room table from my excellent cooking. But I didn't have any. Can you just explain one dietary thing that a lot of Australians say, oh, and I couldn't understand that, the onion. What is it with eating an onion? What's going through your mind there?
Well, I was at a Tasmanian farm. The farmer, understandably, was incredibly proud of his produce. all of us eat raw onion occasionally. Salads. Salads are full of raw onion.
You're quite right. My
Salads
Greek salad.
are full of raw onion. This was an onion
Yes.
that had lost all of its outer skin. It had effectively been peeled.
Tasty?
And I thought the least I can do for someone who is as proud of his product as this particular farmer was take a chomp, and it was beautiful.
So it wasn't that
Absolutely
you cycled 100 kilometres that morning. You were absolutely ravenous.
I'd probably done something that morning, whether I'd been to the gym, got on the bike, gone for a run, who knows, but I certainly would have done something because I try to exercise at the start of every day.
So you're trying to tell me that this is one of the things that I like about you was your eagerness to make the guy feel happy that you ate the onion. And people who mocked you don't realise it was...
The job of the Prime Minister, who is, if you like, the country's cheerleader-in-chief, amongst other things, you're not just the sort of CEO of Australia Inc., you are the cheerleader-in-chief. It is to do what you can to show your appreciation for your fellow Australians. And that's why I'm happy to have a few sips of this beautiful Joadja whisky. Joadja is not far from Mittagong from memory. It would probably be in the electorate of the wonderful Angus Taylor, who's been on Sky earlier this evening. And why not support a distillery from his electorate? You know, there are some distilleries in my electorate. There's a Manly distillery. I don't think they do whisky. I think they only do gin and rum, but I'll explore that.
Yeah, order something. What do you think of it? It's very Spanish.
I don't know. I've had Spanish whisky, so I don't know what a Spanish whisky tastes like.
No, in terms of, the sherry-ish.
But it's a nice drop. It's a nice
Yeah.
drop. I'd certainly be very happy to savour a couple of glasses of this of an evening. It gets my tick of approval.
You're a bit of a whiskey guy.
No, I'm not a huge whisky guy, but look, I'm prepared to try almost anything on the right occasion.
Yes, we've noticed that and we've commented on it. Hey, listen, when you lost that leadership, right, you were as flat as a tack. Broke my heart to see you for months afterwards. How are you feeling now?
Look, it's a very wounding experience, Andrew. To lose the Prime Ministership is very wounding, inevitably, but I didn't come into the Parliament to be Prime Minister. I came into the Parliament to serve the country.
Being Prime Minister is a pretty good deal.
And you can serve the country in a whole lot of different ways. And as you know, I'm running again for my seat of Warringah. And if in the next term of Parliament I serve it out as the member for Warringah, what an honour! What an honour!
Feeling the pressure though? I can't believe the hatred of you. That must, honestly, that must really get you down. I know you to be a good bloke. The things I see written about you, the fact that the Liberal Party under Turnbull never ever defended you, in fact sided with your enemies to sort of, marginalise you, that's got to be wounding, Tony. That has got to be wounding.
Yeah, but again, if you are saying things that matter and need to be said, inevitably there will be vested interests of one sort or another that do their best.
But the
to
deliberate
damage
misrepresentation. I'll give you an example. The other day, and because it goes to this, it's constant.
Yeah.
The other day, you went to an event, Chinese event. You didn't know there were some people from the, what is it? United Works Front, this Chinese
Something
propaganda
like that,
outfit
yeah.
there, and you gave a speech. Sydney Morning Herald, oh, Tony Abbott, oh, what a, communist patsy, there he is. And when you looked at your speech, you actually said the Chinese president was wrong on this and he was wrong on this and he should be freedom. I mean, you did the exact opposite.
And the best thing that Australians of Chinese background can do for their old country is to get a few Australian values into their system. Because as we know, the Chinese system is the polar opposite of ours. And if their system started to look a little bit less like theirs and a little bit more like ours, better for everyone.
But this is a consistent message, but the way that was then misrepresented, deliberately, in my view, some smart aleck, I think it was a Channel 9 reporter as well, I couldn't believe what I was watching. Did you just go home and think, why on earth do I bother? I can't win.
Well, but this is the fate of most who are in public life. I mean, I've often said it, Andrew, if you're in public life, you will be criticised unfairly by people who don't know you for faults you don't have. And occasionally you'll be praised unfairly by people who don't know you for virtues you don't have.
I haven't seen you praised unfairly. I've got to admit, but I have seen someone praised unfairly who, well, Malcolm Turnbull was regularly praised unfairly. I'm not quite sure, mate. Drop the saint issue. Tell me it's got to hurt. I mean, it's got to.
Look, it does.
So why do you keep doing it? Why do you keep bobbing up?
Because it's worth it. You know, I dare say. There were lots of soldiers in the Great War who got wounded time and time again, but they didn't abandon the trenches. They stayed at their posts because it was worth it for their country, for their mates, for their ideals. And this thing is, I don't want to draw too close a parallel between what we politicians do and what
you know, because here you already, you know you're going to get attacked for that.
But nevertheless, in its own way, being a member of Parliament is a vocation. It's a form of public service. It's a difficult one, but it's a necessary one.
What do you think many in the media don't get about you?
Well, that's, I mean, I don't want to speculate on the state of mind that others have, but I think it's absolutely crystal clear that if you are a strong Conservative, and that's what I've always been, that's what John Howard always was, you cop a particular level of criticism which people who go more with the flow tend to avoid. And these times are not very sympathetic to a Conservative position. Inevitably, if you are more inclined to say, let's stop and think before we embrace these changes. Let's count the cost before we embrace these changes. Let's see how this really squares with human flourishing before we make these changes. The change for change's sake brigade, let's have a go at anything because it's new and different.
Magpie eyes.
They don't like it. Now,
do you think some of this has to do with the fact that journalists, I'm guessing here, I haven't seen surveys, but just looking, maybe it's because I'm getting older, seem to be younger now, and they don't know the lessons of history, and they don't know the lessons of conservatism.
It is extraordinary how ignorant so many people are of our history, including people in very senior positions. It's also a little dismaying how little respect people have for things that have stood the test of time, and how ready people are to abandon things, even things which have been, you would have thought, a significant part of their life. But sometimes it's your job to say no, and sometimes it's your job to fail in a good cause. I mean, a really good cause is worth failing for.
Well, only good causes are worth failing for.
Exactly right.
But someone's got to play daddy in the room when everyone else seems to be children. Mate, a lot of your friends and fans would be really concerned that you are going to lose in Warringah. I mean, the campaign against you has got a lot of money behind it. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of unseen backers who are not putting up their heads, but we know they've got money. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Malcolm Turnbull is somehow involved there somehow. You've had a Malcolm Turnbull ex-staffer running against you. She's now pulled out to run against someone else to make way for Zadie Steggall. Tell us, are you going to win?
I'm not complacent, but I am confident because not only do I have a very strong local record as well as a strong national record to point to, but as far as I can make out, I'm the only candidate with a positive local message. I'm for things. I'm not just against an individual. I am for something, the Northern Beaches Tunnel, which is the one big issue which is going to impact positively on every single person in my electorate. I'm for it, 120% for it. None of the other candidates so far declared in my area I can say that because they would rather hedge their bets, they would rather stay ambivalent about something like this.
You reckon that bugger Malcolm Turnbull's involved in trying to get even with you?
That's not something that I could even begin to know. I know that Malcolm was good enough to help me a little bit in the last campaign, and if he'd like to help me a bit in this campaign, obviously he'd be welcome. There's a standing invitation to him.
How long should we wait for an answer? I mean, well, Tony Abbott, I know we wish you the best. You're in the fight of your life, I think.
I am.
Would this be worse than...
I'm treating this as a marginal.
You notice how the ABC's really barracking for Sally Stegel? Have you noticed that?
I had a very stiff contest back in 2001 when the then popularly elected independent mayor of Manly and former state MP Peter McDonald ran against me. The old McDonald crowd is very much behind my opponent again this time. I don't see how anyone who's a fair income Liberal would not want to return a Liberal member for Warringah, and I don't see anyone who is a real Liberal, as opposed to a Liberal of passing convenience, would want to see a shortened government brought closer.
Sally Stegel poses as a moderate kind of Liberal, but she's never voted Liberal in her life federally.
Well, look, on her own admission on this station last week, she conceded that she'd never voted Liberal in her life federally.
Even when Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister.
Even when Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister. So that does say something, but
you're being stitched up. That's what it's telling me. You're being stitched up.
The truth is, Andrew, that if you vote independent in a Liberal-held seat, you are just bringing a shortened government closer, and I don't think any fair income Liberal could want that.
Tony, we haven't had enough time, but that's it. Thank you so much, mate. And final word on this fine Australian whiskey? Good. Okay. Good luck to you, mate.
Thank you.
And that's it for me. Up next, Michael Kroger and special guest, Michael Danby. Goodbye.